What's going on? Why is there a stranger living in this house? I questioned my husband, Drew, who was standing there. Then, my husband said something unbelievable.
You and I divorced 2 months ago already.
What? What the hell do you mean?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you, but I also sold this house.
Excuse me? What on earth is this person talking about? But looking at my husband's triumphant look, it seems that Drew really thinks that there is nothing wrong with what he did. Wow, you know nothing at all, do you? My name is Lisa. I am 35 years old and I work for a company. I have been married to my husband Drew for almost 3 years now. We met at a matchmaking party, and my husband aggressively approached me, and from there, we started to go out. We continued to date and go out at a steady pace, and ended up getting married. When I got married, my dad was very happy. This was because I had been living alone with my dad since my mom died when I was 16 years old. My dad had told me that since I had just started work, I should live on my own and enjoy my 20s. But seeing the lonely look on my dad's face when my mom passed away of her illness, I couldn't really leave him all alone. So that's why I remained at home and lived with my dad for some time after I started working. Still, as I entered my 30s and people around me began to not only get married but also have kids, I began to feel bad about ending up without showing my dad being a bride or his grandkids. Therefore, I started stepping out to meet people at parties. My father was very moved when he saw me as a bride.
I wish your mom could have seen you like this.
I almost cried when he said that. After the wedding ceremony, I started my newlywed life with my husband. I was enjoying my married life, thinking that my next goal was to have a child and show my father the face of his grandchild. My husband and I were in love in the beginning of our marriage, and since we both worked, we supported each other while sharing house chores. But after a year of marriage, my husband's attitude gradually changed. I'm home. Oh? You were late coming back home today?
No, I came home on time as usual.
And you haven't made dinner yet? It was the day my husband was in charge of cooking dinner. But my husband suddenly says something surprising.
I'm not going to make any meals anymore.
Excuse me?
I mean, isn't it strange for a man to do house chores anyway?
That's not true. In this day and age, there is even a term called house husbands, and it doesn't matter what gender you are to do any of the house chores.
People are getting too carried away by the media. Usually, women are better at cooking, so it's best for them to cook, right?
No way. I do love your cooking, you know.
Oh, God. You're such a pain in the ass. Well then, all the days that I'm in charge of cooking, I'll either get us a delivery or get frozen meals.
What? That's a bit... It costs a lot of money, and health-wise it's not that good.
Then you cook.
My husband said that and started forcing me to do all the house chores, even on the days he was in charge. He was kind to me when we first got married, but why has he turned out this way? Maybe this was actually who my husband was. I'm not really sure, but I wasn't thinking about getting a divorce yet. I had been able to make my dad happy by getting married to Drew, but I did not want to make him worry again by getting a simple divorce when I had not yet achieved my goal of showing him his grandkids' faces. Besides, I still loved my husband, and if possible, I wanted to get back to a relationship where we could properly care for each other again. So, I did all the house chores by myself, even though it was very difficult for me to balance everything out. My husband and I are both full-time employees, and we are in about the same position in terms of earning income and having the same responsibilities. The time we leave the house and the time we return home is not much different. So, of course, we split our living expenses 50-50. Yet, my husband seems to think that he is superior. He seems to assume that the man is absolutely superior back at home. After 2 years of marriage, my husband has become a complete chauvinistic husband. I'm home.
You're late. Hurry up and make dinner.
I've been working late, you know. Can't you at least help me cook a little?
Huh? I'm home being exhausted. Besides, housework is your job as a wife, right? Shut up and get on with it.
Being dismayed and disappointed at my husband on how old-fashioned his ideas were, I thought that if I argued further, it would only make me tired. So I had no choice but to cook. From this time on, I gradually lost hope in my marriage with my husband. I doubt that my husband will ever return to the kind person he was when we were first married. I'll never achieve my goal of showing my dad his grandkids. I decided it was time to prepare for divorce, and I decided to talk to Dad about it.
I see.
I'm really sorry. Dad, you were so happy that I got married.
What are you talking about? I'm not saying that you had to get married or that I had to see my grandchildren. As long as you're happy, Lisa, I'm happy. So, if you can't spend your days smiling in your married life, don't force yourself to stay married.
Dad, thank you. Since Dad said that to me, I decided to prepare for divorce. But then, I received a call from the hospital that Dad had collapsed. I had just come home from work and was preparing dinner. What? My dad? I told them I would be right there and started getting ready to go to the hospital. Then my husband stopped me and said,
Hey, where are you going?
Dad collapsed suddenly, and he got taken to the hospital, so I'm going to the hospital. I wanted to go to the hospital as soon as possible, but my husband says something unbelievable.
What? What about my dinner?
Huh?
I'm starving. You better not go to the hospital and just hurry up and finish cooking my dinner.
I despised my husband for what he had said. My love for him had long since disappeared. I mean, I came to really dislike him, or rather, his very existence had become impossible for me to handle. Before I knew it, I was yelling at him. I'm not your mother, you know. Don't be a grown man waiting to be fed like a baby bird. You should at least prepare your own dinner. My husband looked in shock that I said such a thing. I ignored him and left the house, got into the car, and drove to the hospital where my dad was taken. When I arrived at the hospital room, Dad was asleep on the bed. The doctor asked if I was his daughter, and when I said yes, he took me to another room and explained about Dad's condition. He told me that Dad had suffered a stroke while shopping at the supermarket, and that he had been visiting the hospital for several years because he had not been feeling well. I was surprised because I did not know that Dad had been visiting the hospital. The doctor told me that he would be in the hospital for a while and asked me to bring him a change of clothes and, if possible, to visit him frequently to check on him. I immediately agreed and decided to go there every day. But this hospital is quite far from my house. So, I decided to stay at my dad's house for a while because it was closer. But the problem was my husband. I could have divorced him at this point, but there are a lot of procedures and things that need to be done if that were to happen, so the timing is not right now. I went back to my house to take necessary things to live at my dad's place for a couple of months, taking advantage of the time when my husband was not at home. I explained the situation to my husband over text message and told him that I would live at Dad's place for a while and support my dad. And then, as expected, my husband said,
Who'll cook meals during that time? What about house chores?
He never said a word about his concern for my dad's condition. I don't even want to talk to him anymore. Thinking this, I replied, "I told you the other day, you are not a child, so do it yourself," and muted my husband's text message. Then I went to visit my father every day. "I'm sorry. I said I was divorcing Drew, so you got surprised and this happened."
What are you talking about? Don't beat yourself up like that. The truth is, I wasn't feeling very well for a few years now.
Yeah, the doctor told me.
I see. I didn't want to worry you, which is why I didn't tell you. I'm sorry about that.
No, but from now on, you have to be honest with me, okay? You're the only family I have.
Okay.
Then Dad's facial expression became softer. He must have been under a lot of pressure to be a strong parent because he lost his wife first. That's why I tried to never show any weakness. But now I am 35 years old, and I am an adult, working in the society. I want Dad to rely on me at least a little. My dad accepted my feelings and began to ask me for various favors, such as,
I want to eat that snack tomorrow,
and so on. I was happy to be able to do something for him. And Dad was getting better, and the doctor told me that he was going to be able to leave the hospital. So I decided to move back to my dad's house completely and divorce my husband. I went to our home for the first time in about 2 months to discuss about divorce. Then I found a young woman living there who was not a relative of mine. I was so surprised that I froze, and she was also very surprised. "Wait a minute, who are you?" Well, who are you?" The woman in front of me said, "I live here." And to that I replied, "This is my house." At that moment, my husband came out of the bathroom.
Huh? Why are you here?
My husband looked at me and said that. "What's going on? Why is there a stranger living in this house?" I questioned my husband, Drew, who was standing there. Then my husband said something unbelievable.
You and I divorced 2 months ago already. She's Rita, and she's my new wife.
What? What the hell do you mean? I didn't file for divorce.
Oh, don't worry. I already did it for both of us.
But wait, what are you talking about? There's no way you can do that on your own.
Shut up. It was submitted with no issues, so there's no problem. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to tell you, but I also sold this house.
Excuse me?
The money from selling the house will be used to cover for compensation. A compensation for the trouble you caused me for being a bad, terrible wife.
What on earth is this person talking about? I didn't really know if he was being serious or not. But looking at my husband's triumphant look, it seems that Drew really thinks that there is nothing wrong with what he did. Wow, you know nothing at all, do you?
About what?
This house is jointly owned by both of us, you know?
Yeah, I know that. That's why half of it is mine, right? You've been gone out of the house for 2 months, so that's as good as giving me the house, right? All the money from selling the house is mine, and you're a stranger now, so get the hell out.
I don't have to tolerate this guy anymore. Fine. I knew no amount of explanation would help here, so I packed up my belongings, ignoring Drew and Rita looking at me with a victorious look on their faces.
She's finally leaving, huh? Finally, the big baggage got out of my way.
Let's use the money from selling this house to buy a car or go on an overseas trip.
That sounds great. I want to go to Italy.
Both Drew and Rita would say such things like that as I left. But just you wait and see. I didn't just go home to visit Dad at the hospital. I will do everything in my power to revenge them. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Drew.
Oh, hey! What the hell is going on? Why do I have to pay $250,000 in alimony? This is impossible.
My husband was intensely upset. I calmly explained to him, because what you did was fraud and adultery. You deserve to be charged that amount. It's a settlement so that you won't be erased from society.
What? What are you talking about? I never committed adultery. I remarried after you divorced me.
There's no point in playing dumb like that. I had the investigating agency investigate about your affair while I was away from home. I know that you had an affair with that woman while we were married. And the divorce papers you filed on your own in the first place are invalid.
What? No way.
Drew apparently really thought that the divorce papers were valid. But since we have proof of Drew's affair, he understood that he would have to pay alimony. The crime of submitting the divorce papers without permission is also known as a forgery of a private document. In other words, it is a complete crime. If I file a proper notification to the police, you will be a criminal.
Excuse me?
Then you'll be fired from your job and won't even be able to find another job since it'll be in your records.
Oh no.
Well, if you prefer that, I'll cancel the settlement and file the report.
Well, wait a minute. Okay. But even so, isn't $250,000 too much?
That includes all the harassment I received from you, as well as the fees for your affair. So I get $200,000, which is half of the $400,000 you sold the house for, and $50,000 in alimony.
No way. I'm going to be left with $50,000 in debt.
So I can call the police then? But if I do that, I'm sure you'll lose more than $50,000 though.
Oh, I got it. I'll pay you. Just don't do that.
It's settled then. Thus, I officially divorced my husband and got all $400,000 of the money from selling the house. And since my husband said he couldn't pay in one lump sum, he decided to pay the $50,000 in alimony in installments. I told him that if he failed to pay the alimony, I would report the crime to the police, so the payment has been made without delay. Of course, I also requested alimony of $30,000 from Rita. Rita said that she too was charged such alimony, plus she didn't get the money from selling the house, and when she found out that my ex-husband was in debt, she immediately dumped him. So, Drew was left completely alone, living even poorer and paying alimony every day. But it was all his own fault, so I don't feel sorry for him. On the other hand, I had a lot of money, and my dad was out of the hospital and living well at home, so although my marriage was difficult, I thought it was a good thing in the end. I am also approaching my late 30s, and it is getting harder and harder to find new people. So, I am thankful that I have some savings. So for now, I'm going to live while working hard and cherishing the time I have with my dad. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in our next video. Having gathered so much evidence, I confronted my husband, Leo, with evidence from photos and divorce papers and demanded him for a divorce. My husband was surprised, as he didn't think I had found out, but eventually he shifted to a defiant attitude.
I'm sorry I hid it from you. I will comply to the divorce. But I have one favor to ask.
What do you mean? What's the favor?
I'll leave home and go live with my girlfriend. So, please, just take care of my mom.
My name is Jasmine. I am 50 years old and I still work at a company. My husband, Leo, and I have been married for 25 years this year. I met my husband through work, and we got married about a year after we started dating. We had a child soon after we got married, and then another child 3 years later. And our family of 4 lived happily together for all these years. My eldest son is already 25 years old and working really hard at his job. And my eldest daughter is currently in her 4th year of college and job hunting. As my children are no longer in need of my help, I thought I would be able to make time for my husband and I to spend time together as a married couple. Now that I think about it, it took us quite a long time to get to this point. After my husband and I got married, we worked together and sent money to Leo's parents monthly. The amount we sent to his parents was $2,000 per month, which was reasonably high. The reason why we were sending so much money was because my father-in-law became very ill and was unable to work. My father-in-law was only 53 years old then and was still in his prime. But because of his illness, he couldn't work anymore. And my mother-in-law had to take care of him. So she also could not work. And since hospital bills were also a monthly expense, we had to send them $2,000, which also included living expenses. We were still in our 20s back then and just had a baby. So it was really difficult for us to send $2,000 a month. However, my husband's parents, whom he loves very much, were in need of help. So we continued to send money to them while trying our best to save money. And I can't say this too loudly, but I was not too fond of my mother-in-law, Lila. Lila was who you might call an old-fashioned person, and she didn't like the idea of women going out to work instead of staying at home doing house chores. Besides, she was very strict with me because she loved her only son, my husband, very much. For this reason, when I went to my parents-in-law's house, I was often ordered to do this and that for her, and made me do household chores, and complained and said sarcastic things about me a lot. When my first son was born, they became a little nicer to me, but still, their basic stance remained the same. So I tried to avoid seeing Lila as much as possible by sending money to her. I was trying my best to send money home to Leo's parents so that I wouldn't have to see Lila as much as possible, because I didn't want to have to live with her if she ever decided to move in with us. Thankfully, my husband and I were both earning fairly well, so even with the money we were sending home, we still had enough to live on. Also, when our eldest daughter was born, I had been promoted, and my salary had gone up, so we were getting by. However, after a few years of working hard to help Leo's parents financially, I went to visit my parents-in-law's house for the first time in a while, and found that Lila had many luxury bags and expensive accessories, which made me feel somewhat uncomfortable. If Lila could afford such luxuries, why did I bother to save my money and send money to her? But it would be troublesome to question Lila here. And since I was in my 30s and had a position with a much higher salary, I didn't care much about it. And I was busy with work, house chores, and raising kids every day. And before I knew it, more than 20 years passed in the blink of an eye. But in the midst of all this, I began to feel something strange about my husband. My husband's workplace was a company with fairly good reputation, and he rarely works overtime. So, he always came home early and often arrived home way before I did. However, over the past few years, my husband has been working overtime more and more frequently compared to before. He says that his workload has been increasing in proportion to the company's improved business conditions. As a result, he is having to work more overtime and also work during the weekend and holidays. If he is that much busy at work, I'm pretty grateful because it means he earns that much more money. I was even more grateful because at the time my eldest daughter had just entered college, and we had to pay for her college tuition fee, which was pretty expensive. But when I asked my husband to provide a little more money into our shared account, he hesitated to do that, and he didn't in the end. Instead, he would say things like,
"We're a little tight this month."
and I would be the one to provide more. And I was the one who mostly sent the money to my in-laws. And yet, on his days off, he would go out with his friends for drinks. At this point, Leo was so busy that he didn't converse with my son or daughter as much as he used to. And even when he was at home with us, I felt somewhat distant from him. He hasn't been this busy with work in the last 20 years or so. Having seen what I had seen about my husband's work in the past, I felt uncomfortable with the current situation. But I still did not doubt him. After all, we had been married for over 20 years, so I guess I trusted him. I decided to trust my husband and spent my days trying not to care much about it. And like that, we were married for 25 years. My father-in-law has already passed away, and Lila lives alone in their house currently. I thought that if it was just Lila, she wouldn't need $2,000 a month, so I decided to talk to my husband about my concerns. But then, my husband vehemently disagreed.
My mother had worked so hard all her life to take care of my father. So, we should send her $2,000 as a token of our appreciation for my mother and her hard work.
But when I go over to Lila's house, I always see lots and lots of luxury goods around the house. Don't you think so? Doesn't that mean she is being extravagant? I worked so hard to earn my income, and if she was going to waste it like that, I wanted to spend it more on our kids.
How dare you say that to me? Are you insulting my mother? What a terrible wife you are.
Wait a minute now. Why should I be blamed like that? Originally, it was $2,000 for the two of them, your father and your mother. So, we promised each other that we'd pay $1,000 each. But gradually, you started paying less and less, and I'm mainly the one paying for it now. So, as a result, I send most of the money now. And you send only $100 to $200 a month, right? What right do you have to blame and complain to me? Can you send $2,000 to my parents? Don't you think you should be a little more grateful to me? When I said it to him harshly, he just couldn't find any right words to say anything back and fell silent. Up until now, we have been sending $2,000 as a total for your father and mother. So from now on, can we just send $1,000 to your mother? If Lila combines that with her pension, she should be able to get by.
Fine.
My husband reluctantly agreed, and my financial burden decreased considerably. But after this incident, my husband and I really stopped talking. I was a little depressed that we had such a big argument on our 25th wedding anniversary. But I guess it was inevitable that my frustration would explode because I had been putting up with it for so long. Then I received a happy report that my daughter had successfully received a job offer. I decided to take my daughter to visit a rather expensive Italian restaurant as a celebration. My daughter knew that my husband and I were currently not in a good relationship, and my husband rarely spoke to my daughter anymore. So we decided to go to celebrate together. We had made reservations in advance, so we went to the Italian restaurant with my daughter at the time of our reservation. However, as we got closer to the entrance, my daughter and I were surprised to see something. To our surprise, my husband came out of that Italian restaurant with a young woman whom we've never seen before. And the woman's arm was clinged on to my husband's arm. But my husband and the woman were walking in a different direction, so they didn't seem to notice that we were watching them.
Dad, you're the worst.
My daughter glared at my husband's back with an angry look on her face. I, on the other hand, felt somewhat better. I could now disassociate myself from my husband. Up until now, I had always wanted to be with my husband to the end for whatever reason. I thought it was my responsibility and duty as a wife who had been with him this long. Even though my children were grown and independent, I did not think it would be good for parents to divorce without some major issue. But if Leo had committed adultery, then that would be a different story. My husband was totally to blame, and he was the one who ruined our family. So I immediately decided to divorce him. I had witnessed my husband's affair, but I needed to have solid proof. So I hired an investigating agency to take actual photos and evidence. When they investigated, they found a surprising fact. My husband's affair had been going on for several years. In other words, he had already been having an affair when he started doing a lot of overtimes and working on holidays. And the amount of money Leo was sending to his parents had been reduced, probably to pay for dates with his mistress and other expenses. Having gathered so much evidence, I confronted my husband, Leo, with evidence from photos and divorce papers and demanded him for a divorce. My husband was surprised, as he didn't think I had found out, but eventually he shifted to a defiant attitude.
I'm sorry I hid it from you. I will comply to the divorce. But I have one favor to ask.
What do you mean? What's the favor?
I'll leave home and go live with my girlfriend. So please, just take care of my mom.
Excuse me?
You've been taking good care of my mother, right? So please send her money like you always have. If you want, you can have her live with you. I'm sure my mother would be happy to live with her grandkids.
Is this guy insane or what? What in the world is he talking about? I was so stunned that I could not come up with any words what to say to him. My husband seemed to have misunderstood that me being silent of astonishment meant that I agreed with his idea.
Well then, I'll leave you to her.
With that, he filled out the divorce papers, packed his belongings, and left. I was beyond angry and disgusted by my husband's unbelievable behavior. And because of this, my love for my husband completely disappeared instantly. On the contrary, I felt refreshed. I reported what had happened to my daughter and son, and they were both appalled. And they said they would cut off ties with my husband even if he was their father. My son was already living on his own, and my daughter had found a job and was planning to leave home. So I put the house on the market and bought a new apartment. We moved out right away, and while living in the comfortable and spacious condo, we decided to take our time together to find a room for my daughter to live alone. Of course, during the divorce proceedings, I have requested alimony from my husband through my lawyer. But still, Leo seems to be really reluctant to pay the alimony. Then, about a month after filing for divorce, I received a phone call from my husband.
Hey, why aren't you sending money to my mother?
My husband shouted like that as soon as I picked up the phone. What do you mean? I mean, isn't it obvious? I'm not that nice enough to send money to a complete stranger every month.
What? But you agreed to it then at that time, didn't you?
Are you stupid? I was just being stunned and being speechless.
So, you're not going to send money from now on?
Of course.
Oh no. Then that means I have to send money to my mother.
Yes. And well, why don't you just move in with her for the sake of it? Why don't you and your current girlfriend live with your mother all together?
No way, that's not a good idea. I don't want her to have a hard time.
Huh? You mean you were willing to put me through all that? You really are the worst. But with your salary, you can't afford to lavish your girlfriend with your money if you're going to send money to your mother. Maybe she'll leave you sooner or later.
Oh no. Then I'll have my son or daughter send money to their grandmother. They're working now too.
You're terrible. But they won't pay for sure, because they were saying that they cut off any ties with you. So I believe that they blocked your contact information too.
Huh? No way.
Can I go now? I really don't want to talk to you anymore.
Wait a minute for a bit. I forgot to talk to you about alimony. Why are you charging us $50,000 each for alimony? That's just too much, isn't it?
That's only natural since you cheated on me and had an affair with her for years, right? And that includes a small refund for all the money I worked so hard to give to your parents. So, I'll make sure that you both pay for what you owe me. I'll use my lawyer and demand for it from both of you forever and ever. So you better pay back even if you have to be in debt. Okay? That's how much terrible you are. You should realize. I shouted with every power I had, and my husband let out a pathetic eek over the phone. The phone went dead, and I never heard from my husband again. After that, my husband agreed to pay alimony and paid me a little every month. As for Leo's affair partner's alimony, the parents of the affair partner took over the responsibility and paid it in a lump sum. According to what was said at the time, Leo's girlfriend and Leo had separated soon after the alimony was demanded. In other words, my husband has been abandoned by both his mistress and her family, and he seems to be spending his days alone trying to pay off the alimony and sending money to his mother. On the other hand, I am living a comfortable life in my new home. My daughter and son often came to visit me, and each time they give me an update on what's going on. They're both working hard at their jobs as working adults and enjoying their private lives and love lives. From now on, I will continue to watch over my children's growth as I have in the past, while I will also try new hobbies and things I have never done before. I am only 50 years old, and life is long, so I'll just enjoy it to the fullest. It's difficult to be married for 25 years and then have your husband cheat on you. And it sucks that your own husband had an affair for so many years without you noticing. I think Leo should have been punished more. But I would rather spend meaningful time with my daughter and son than to be concerned about a man like him forever. It seems that Jasmine has a stable income, and she has a long way to go in life, so I hope she will try many things and live a fulfilling life. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in our next video.